Hi, everybody. Welcome back to DeProgram. I'm John Kiriakou, and I am here with Ted Rall. We've been off for a couple of days. We've been doing a little bit of traveling here and there, but man, the news has not stopped. And I think probably the most important domestic developments that we've seen this past week have been in the legal realm relative to Donald Trump's deportations of people whose personal politics he doesn't like. Ted, we've seen a couple of these developments play out just in the last couple of days. This Turkish Ph.D. candidate has been ordered back to Vermont, I think it was. And there was another potential deportee who was ordered yesterday back to the Eastern District of Virginia, known as the Espionage Court. But on these issues of free speech, it looks like he's probably going to get a fair shake there. What do you think?
Yeah, it looks like, dare we say that the system is starting to work the way it's supposed to? Right. It's far from where it needs to be. I mean, justice delayed is justice denied, and these individuals have had their justice severely delayed, and as have others that we've spoken about, like Mahmoud Khalil. This has been going on now for weeks and now stretching into months. So the damage has already been done, but in a slow way, the system seems to finally be waking up. I think that 7-2 U.S. Supreme Court ruling was taken notice of by the district and the federal district courts, and I think they were the appellate courts. And they're kind of getting their guidance from there. I think it's like sort of a signal. The Trump administration doesn't really have any sound legal basis for these deportations. And what's really truly remarkable about it is that they're not even playing cute by ginning up false accusations against these people. They're literally going out in the press and on social media, and they're saying, we don't like the fact that these people criticized Israel and its war in Gaza, and we're going to deport them because of that. And the courts, they can't like that. Even Trump appointees can't like that. I mean, if you went to law school, you can't like that. So it's nice to see it happening, but I would love to see some emergency injunctions that order the immediate release of these people. It's apparently not going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's not going to happen. And we should add that, on the contrary, the Trump administration and its allies seem to be doubling down. Just this morning, there were more mass arrests at Columbia University, just right where you live in your neighborhood. And the only crime these people are alleged to have committed was to march in support of Palestinian human rights.
Yeah, I guess, they can be found guilty of trespassing because they entered Low Library, which is a misnomer. It hasn't been a library in many, many years. It's actually a building that's now used strictly for either social events or for administrative offices. The president's office is there, for example. Mm-hmm. It's purely ceremonial, but if you ever see a picture of the Columbia campus, it's the most striking building on the campus. It's a domed, columned building, kind of like the famous building at MIT. Those two campuses kind of, the icons of those campuses kind of look similar. It's as a former Columbia student and graduate, I'm very proud of my fellow Columbians. They're taking tremendous risks now. I mean, the atmosphere is extremely toxic on campus. They've pretty much blockaded the campus and made it very clear that there's a zero tolerance policy to any kind of protest of any kind whatsoever, especially pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel protests. So to have 80 students who are willing to, they know they're going to be arrested. That's the posture of the the previous and now the new acting president of the university, it shows that you just can't keep good kids down. And they could have easily slipped into the end of the semester, which is next week, and just sort of slipped into summer somnolence, and no one would have thought less of them, especially given how things are. So this is truly, they're great, and I'm so happy that they're doing that, and it's really important. And I think it's important for the authorities to know that they're not going to be able to crush this movement. They're just not going to be able to. I think, maybe I'm naive, I think the more they try to do this, the worse it's going to get for them. I think this is having the exact opposite impact. They're building up the pressure cooker. They're not, they're not releasing the pressure. It's only going to cause students to become, and the faculty to become, more resentful. The breach between the administration and the rest, and basically it's the administration and a tiny cadre of pro-Israel militants who are really on the far right of campus dialogue, and then versus everyone else, most of the faculty, most of the student body. It's gotten really ugly, and the optics are so ugly that they can no longer be ignored.
Yeah, it seems like there are two fights taking place here. One is the desire of students to exercise their constitutional rights to freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, right? I mean, that seems like a gimme, an easy one. The other fight, the harder fight, is the fight being waged by the graduate students being targeted for deportation. They've literally not done anything wrong. They're being expelled from the United States because of their political views. And at the district level, district judges have not been unanimous. Some have said they have the same constitutional rights as everybody else. Others have said that they don't need to have committed a crime to be expelled by the State Department, that they're here really only because whoever happens to be Secretary of State at any given time says they can be here, and that if Marco Rubio says that they are causing some sort of problem for U.S. foreign policy, they can legally be expelled. So this is going to have to go to the circuit courts of appeal. It's probably going to have to go to the Supreme Court after that. But I have to tell you, I'm not sanguine that they're going to get the same kind of hearing that they might have gotten 20 years ago or 50 years ago. I think that this is an uphill fight for some of these people.
Yeah, I think that the Supreme Court, for this Supreme Court, this conservative Supreme Court with a lot of Trump appointees, they know what's right, but they're going to be very reluctant to do it. What's needed here is a full-throated defense of First Amendment rights, and and building a wall that protects green card holders and other legal people who are here legally, and for that matter, everybody else, from this kind of government overreach. I mean, that's what this is, and the Supreme Court should step in. I suspect that what tips things over for Justice Roberts and others has been like the nasty rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration about judges, including Supreme Court judges, saying that they're involved in a judicial coup, and right, that some of them should be impeached. That's not sitting well with him. No. I guarantee you. And he has said as much. So, for the Trump administration, this seems to be like a game. But I think for the courts to handle this as anything other than a full-throated rebuke to executive power is not going to work. I mean, one answer is that the Alien Enemies Act should probably be overturned. It should have been overturned after how it was used against Japanese Americans and German Americans during World War II. And the Immigration Act of 1952 needs, at least part of it should be stricken, because it's unconstitutionally vague. That part about, you're causing trouble for U.S. foreign policy. What does that even mean? So right. There's just no way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. This is going to get worse before it gets better. And as I said a minute ago, the administration is not backing down. Hey, I want to, before we go to foreign affairs, and we absolutely have to talk about what is turning out to be a hot war between India and Pakistan. It's got to be nobody in the world can be happy about this. But we should talk about these new developments with Senator John Fetterman, my now least favorite member of the U.S. Senate. John Fetterman, if you'll recall, had a stroke in the midst of the campaign 3 years ago against Dr. Oz. And Fetterman won that race, even though he had a stroke and couldn't campaign for 6 weeks. Well, he won. He was sworn in and immediately went into a depressive funk and had to check himself into Walter Reed Hospital. He was treated for severe clinical depression. The depression was brought on by the stroke, and he came to an agreement with doctors and with his staff that he would take certain medications. He would work with his staff to make sure that he kept taking those medications, and he would stay in close touch with the doctors. Well, there was a piece in New York Magazine a couple of weeks ago saying that Fetterman has been blowing up at his staff. He flies into a rage and sometimes throws things. He swears at people. There's been almost a 100% turnover in his Senate staff. And this is newsworthy, his former chief of staff and a second senior staff member went on the record for this story. As you can imagine, Fetterman was furious when the story came out. He said it was a hit piece. Those were the words that he used. He said that his former chief of staff was jealous over his success, over Fetterman's success, which is absurd. And he didn't want to talk about it. He said that he has been telling the truth about remaining on his medication. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just these people are jealous. Well, an hour ago, and we're recording this on, Thursday morning. Mm-hmm. An hour ago, the Associated Press reported that in a meeting just a couple of days ago between Fetterman and senior representatives of Pennsylvania's teachers union, the Pennsylvania chapter of the NEA, the National Education Association, Fetterman went into some kind of weird monologue, repeating himself over and over and over again. Why do people hate me? I haven't done anything to any of you. Why do you hate me? Screaming, pounding his fists on the desk. Why does everybody hate me? Why is everybody turned against me? To the point where a junior staff member ended the meeting, escorted the NEA people out of the office and into the hall, and then burst into tears. So the president of the Pennsylvania NEA, the PEA, was called for an interview. This was by Associated Press. He refused any comment, but two other people who were in the meeting and did not want to be named said that description of the meeting was accurate, that Fetterman wasn't making any sense, that he kept repeating himself. He became very agitated. He began pounding the desk with his fists, that he frightened the attendees. And it wasn't just the staff member who started crying in the hall, but several of the teachers who were in the meeting began crying in the hall. Fetterman said today that he will not resign, that this account was not true, this account of the meeting. He said that he only became animated because he was thinking about how Donald Trump is ruining public education. And the reason he raised his voice was because he wanted to ensure that people understood that Pennsylvania will never become the state of private schools. It's the state of public schools. He just made up some nonsense. How bad do you think this is? There are already people lining up among Republicans to run against Fetterman. And AP said that a lot of people behind the scenes are talking about running against him in the Democratic primary as Democrats. Is Fetterman going to be around for very long? What do you expect to see?
He's going to have to step down. This is it's a shit show. And that New York Magazine article has a lot more juicy tidbits in there. talking about, for example, how his wife does not understand his sudden change of heart on Israel and Palestine, and that she came to the office and begged him not to sign off on a pro-Israel resolution and said, they're bombing refugee camps. You can't support this. And he was like, oh, that's all propaganda. That's not true. This all happened on the record. The chief of staff actually had written a letter of concern, not to New York Magazine, but had written it to Fetterman's physician, and basically was asking and saying, please step in. I don't think the senator is taking his meds. He locked himself into his Senate office, and basically there was concern that he might harm himself. And before they convinced him to get out, his behavior has been wildly erratic, very depressive, manic would probably be the best way to describe it. And he's changed. I mean, here's where we are, right? We're at a point where this guy, we let go of the fact that he was wearing running shorts and a hoodie to the floor of the U.S. Senate.
They had to change the rules of the Senate to allow him to continue wearing shorts and hoodies.
Yeah, and so he's behaving. He's basically the U.S. Senate's version of Kanye. He's he's behaving like a madman, right? Now, I have unlike a lot of people, I can separate the politics from the man, and I have compassion for him. This could happen to anyone. You can have this debilitating physical assault. It can change your personality. It can really mess you up. And I would say, if I were, I don't know who has the power. Maybe only the Senate can impeach him, right? But he would have to be impeached through the House, and then convicted in the Senate.
Right.
But I mean, I guess if I were Chuck Schumer, I would call Fetterman in and I'd threaten him and I'd say, listen, you're taking a leave of absence, 6 months, 3 months, and you're getting better and you're following your doctor's your orders to the letter. If they're telling you to do talk therapy, you're doing talk therapy. If you do all the meds they tell you to do, and then we'll revisit. But you can keep your position. You're ill, right? And being ill should not be grounds for impeachment. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like if you're a pilot and suddenly your vision starts to deteriorate. Mm-hmm. I think the airline should put you on leave and try to get you treated. But if you refuse to go to the ophthalmologist, if you refuse to wear glasses, then you shouldn't fly. And so I think that's where we are. I mean, we've talked about the Marco Rubio says that being in the United States is a privilege. Okay, well, being a United States senator is a privilege, and this isn't about his right to be to get to play senator and have a big office. It's about the people of Pennsylvania and their right to be represented in an efficient way. From what I've read also in this, and I thought this was extremely concerning, his staff has not been allowing him to meet with constituents because they're terrified. They can't be guaranteed that he won't go off or say something completely terrifying to a constituent. I mean, if you can't meet with your constituents, you can't serve as an elected official. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he's capable of serving. And unfortunately, I'm sure the House can certainly, impeach him with a majority vote. The Republicans have the votes. It would be a bad look. I wish it wouldn't come to that. And I wish that Fetterman or the people around Fetterman would have the ability to tell him to do the right thing. But it sounds like his staff is falling away. It looks like his wife is this close to filing for separation or divorce.
Well, you remember she actually moved out of the House after the election. So he had won the seat. He was preparing to move to Washington, and she actually moved out of the House. And people speculated at the time that his recovery was not going as swimmingly as he wanted people to believe. Yeah.
And I think maybe we should have taken note, for example, of the jogging shorts and the hoodie thing. It's not asking a lot to ask a member of the Senate to show up in a suit and a tie. I would.
I said that at the time. I said that at the time. It was demeaning to the institution. It's like, my God, man, I get that you're comfortable in shorts and a hoodie, but it's the United States Senate. It's the most august organization in the world, the most exclusive club in the world. Show some respect for the organization. Put on a pair of pants and a jacket, for heaven's sake.
Agreed. Yeah, and there's like, you know, I mean, if like, let's say he had a colostomy bag and he needed to wear loose-fitting clothes,
no problem.
Some allowance maybe needed to be made, sure, but that's not the case. There's nothing physical here. I mean, it's getting increasingly disturbing, right? I mean, this to me has echoes of all the gerontocracy stuff that we talked about previously. You know, I mean, the Dianne Feinstein cover up, you know, the Joe Biden cover up, which is, you know, just exploding now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, honestly, the American people have a right to have there needs to be transparency about the physical and mental health of their elected officials. I don't care if it's like a mayor of a small town. Same thing, you know, if you can't do the job, you can't do the job. So, you know, and I also think it brings up an interesting question, right? Like, quite literally, John Fetterman started to really become pro-Israel after he lost his mind. So I would like to say maybe being like a radical, insane Zionist is a form of insanity.
Yeah, right. Good call. Yeah. You know, if I were John Thune, the Republican leader, the majority leader of the Senate, I would go to Chuck Schumer and I would say, look, give the guy 3 months off or 6 months off. Have him go back to Walter Reed. He clearly needs treatment. I wouldn't want him to be impeached because, as you said correctly, it sets a bad precedent. It's a bad look. There is no 25th Amendment for members of Congress, so they can't remove him against his will. And if he resigns, you know, what's to stop Josh Shapiro, let's say, from appointing himself or appointing somebody that's young and popular and is going to win election after election after election? It's better for the Republicans to keep Fetterman in place and not voting. But with that said, somebody has to say something to him, honestly, as a friend, as a colleague. You need help, and you should get that help right now.
Now, here's the problem, right? I mean, so with mental illness, which this might be the mental, you know, manifestation of a physical illness, is what it sounds like.
Yep.
But, you know, mental illness is physical. It's just, we can't, you know, it's not mysterious. It's just that, you know, it's part of the brain that we can't see because we're not allowed to chop people's brains while they're still alive. But, you know, the problem is that who's going to be, it may not be possible to get him to see reason because, you know, his brain isn't functioning correctly, right? It's not working optimally.
That's right.
So, I mean, it's entirely possible that no one will, you know, he certainly isn't listening to his wife. He's not listening to his staff. Yeah. I mean, to me, the letter that I read, you know, that was quoted in New York Magazine was not the letter of a staffer who was jealous of John Fetterman's station in life, right?
Yes.
It's like this was a expression of deep concern and care that was written, by the way, after probably a year and a half later than it ought to have been written.
That's right.
So this person really waited and loves and cares about Senator Fetterman. So, you know, I mean, if he's not listening to them, I mean, he may not listen to anyone, but I agree but I mean, basically it comes down to, you know, this is a Chuck Schumer job. You know,
it is.
He's the minority leader. He should, you know, I mean, I suppose he could also get his Republican counterpart to join him, maybe make it a bipartisan thing. Like, we both care about you and we want you to get better. We want you to get well, and even say, like, look, it's not political. You know, Republicans have strokes.
It's not political.
You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was working for John Kerry, I was very surprised at the deference with which someone like Kerry would show to, at the time, it was Harry Reid, the majority leader. He didn't call him Harry. He didn't call him senator. He called him leader. Now, Kerry was one of the most senior members of the Senate at the time, and he still showed almost obsequiousness to Reid. and I was in the what do you call it? The cubby, the little private office just off the floor of the Senate. It was the only time I had ever been in there. And Reed called Kerry on the phone, and Kerry walked into the corner and greeted him as, "Hello, leader. Yes, sir. What can I do for you, leader?" Every time he referred to him, it was leader or leader Reed. So I know that Chuck Schumer has that kind of authority over Fetterman. He can tell him to take time off and get his act together. We'll see if he actually does.
And then, and I don't think it would be a bad thing for John Thune, the Republican majority leader, to be in the room as well, and to make very clear, like, we don't want to have to push you out.
Yes, exactly.
But we will if we have to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right.
I really have compassion. I don't agree with Fetterman's politics, but I have deep compassion for what's happening to him.
I do too. I've made a joke on this show and on our previous shows that I sent Fetterman $50 like 4 years ago. I hated Dr. Oz so much for a whole bunch of reasons. So when I didn't even have $50, I sent $50 to Fetterman. And then as soon as he got elected, he turned into this Zionist firebrand and is rude to people. And, and looking back, it's probably as a result of his stroke.
Yeah, but some of that Zionist stuff that he said, by the way, that he's quoted is way over the top. Like, they should all be killed. It's fine with me if everyone over minimum military age in Gaza is killed. That's 12. I mean, okay, this is insane genocidal rhetoric.
Yeah, it really is. This is sick. He needs help.
I think, I do think. I mean, he wasn't exactly a friend of Palestine before any of this, but he wasn't. He's gotten. I mean, he's driven off the cliff, and he just kept going.
Ted, before we get to India and Pakistan and Yemen, if we have a couple of minutes, I got to ask you about news in Georgia that Governor Brian Kemp will not run for the Senate against Senator John Ossoff, the progressive Democrat. The Republicans are beside themselves for two reasons. Number one, polls showed Kemp only 3 points behind Ossoff. That was an eminently winnable race for the Republicans. I would go so far as to say that I would have called Ossoff the underdog. Okay, number one. Number two, there were a lot of Republicans saying that, well, if Kemp doesn't run, I'd like to run. One of those Republicans is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And Marjorie Taylor Greene's positive negative numbers are underwater by almost 40 percentage points. So in a race against Ossoff, he wins it 62-17 in a conservative southern state. She, of course, is tailor-made for the district that she's in. It is the reddest district in the state. It's in northern Georgia. Trump won there by more than 35 percentage points. But the political reporting that I've seen says that if she were to run, she would likely win the Republican nomination and get crushed in the general election because both Democrats and independents hate her so much that they'll turn out for Ossoff even if they're not excited about him. Do you think that that's true?
It's hard to say that. I mean, we've seen the ever since Stacey Abrams, right? We've kind of sort of seen that, Georgia's about to burst out as a blue state. It's like Texas. So close. We can taste it. Yeah. Like, I mean, like Texas. And we've seen that kind of happen with Nevada, kind of. I mean, Arizona. I mean, things can and do change. I mean, I think that, Democrats are kind of like counting their Georgia eggs before they're hatched.
Yeah.
I don't really necessarily believe that that Marjorie Taylor Greene would lose that race. I have to say, if it forced me to bet on it, I'd give that race to her.
In the general or in the primary?
In the general, I do. I think she would. I think she'd carry it. Georgia is such a conservative state.
Yeah, it really.
Atlanta, yeah, okay, it's a very black city, very democratic city, but Atlanta. So Atlanta is not doesn't have 50% of the population of Georgia. So I just don't think so.
Yeah, man, that's going to be one to watch. The Republicans have done this in the past. They did it just in the last 10 years. We've seen races like this in Indiana, in Missouri, in Delaware, all over the place, where they're on the brink of winning a democratically held Senate seat. They nominate somebody who is so extremely right-wing that, calling for the death penalty for women who get abortions, that kind of thing, that they just watch.
That's happened. But this is a little different now. I think, MTG, she's going to have the full-throated endorsement of Team Trump and MAGA world in a way that she was tolerated before. He loves her now. So this is the way for Georgia MAGA world to vote for Trump again. Yes. That's why I see it that way. I think this is a different thing.
I've got to switch us to international affairs. Last week, a group of tourists riding ponies in the Indian-controlled part of Kashmir were just finishing up their ride, going back to the stables, when a group of gunmen came out of the woods where they had been hiding and just opened fire on these people. They were all civilians. They were all tourists, and most of them were from Pakistan. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. 26 people were killed. A bunch were wounded in the gunfire, and it's brought the two countries to the brink of war. Now, this is something that world leaders have worried about for decades, right? Since the two countries were created in 1947.
Right.
They also both have nuclear weapons. They've both tested those nuclear weapons, so we know that they work. One thing that most people don't know is that the United States actually controls the order to launch Pakistan's nuclear weapons. So at least there's that. Yeah. So it didn't stop the two sides from launching rockets at each other, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Pakistan attacked India over the weekend. Mm-hmm. The Indians responded with an attack of their own. The Pakistanis, day before yesterday, sent a wave of drones to attack military sites in India. The Indians said just in the last couple of hours that they intend to attack a military base outside of Lahore. And I think that's the military base where I was holed up with Abu Zubaydah for several days.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's actually quite a nice military base. This looks like it's getting worse. Nobody's threatening nuclear launches yet. But, I mean, we all, I think, ought to be a little bit worried about that. The last time India and Pakistan went to the brink of war / to the brink of nuclear war was in 2002. When that happened, Rich Armitage, who was the Deputy Secretary of State at the time, flew to Pakistan and talked both sides down. We're not seeing even hints of that kind of diplomacy being planned by the Trump administration. Where does this go? Whether in the coming days, as they're exchanging tit-for-tat attacks, or in the coming months when things may get even worse?
Well, I mean, so I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but I was in Pakistani Kashmir in 1999 when the Kargil conflict broke out. That's the third Kashmir war. And at that time, basically, General Pervez Musharraf, he launched a military coup, overthrew the Prime Minister Sharif in Islamabad in Pakistan, took over, and then kind of wink, nudge, authorized the Afghan Taliban to cross the border into Pakistan as a proxy to fight the Indians in a sort of high-altitude war across what is called the line of control, which is basically the frozen conflict zone line that was established by the UN back in 1948 after the first Kashmir War. And a lot of the rocket fire is going over the line of control now. Now, back then, as you well know, I mean, AFPAC, as they called it, was the center of the world for the Bush administration. I mean, their foreign policy was very focused on that, and Pakistan was a close U.S. ally of the Bush administration, which was getting, they backed Pervez Musharraf. They loved him. They sent money after. I remember calling Ahmed Rashid, the great Pakistani journalist and author, right after 9/11. And I said, what's going on? He said, oh, we think your people are going to come and kill us all because of our role in 9/11. And so a few months later, I said, hey, you guys got a raise. Congratulations. And he was like, yeah, it's the weirdest thing. He just didn't understand. And but the point is, this administration is so focused on other places, Ukraine, Israel, China. I think they haven't been paying much attention. They think of this as old news. They kind of don't get it. I don't get the sense that at the upper levels, I don't mean deep state levels, but I mean upper levels of the political class in this administration, that there's anyone there who really understands Central and South Asia. I just don't think they get it.
I have to agree with that. Yeah.
So they don't know what's going on over there.
Yeah.
And so, basically what, and the equation has changed since 2002 in that now, the Indians have moved. We have Modi. He's a right winger.
Very much so.
He has a political base that he needs to assuage here, and that's what this is. That's what this is about, right? I mean, Pakistan obviously has a long-standing problem of having harbored radical Islamist groups. No question about it.
And funded and trained Kashmiri separatist groups.
And all the madrasas that were financed by the Saudis, the Wahhabis, all those training camps that we were so obsessed with in Afghanistan actually were in Pakistan, right?
Yes.
So, Pakistan is a major problem of in that region. That said, this group, the allegation that somehow they were an asset of the Pakistani government, I think is a gross exaggeration, probably not true. And so this was a provocation. The Indians decided, they know that. They're smart enough to know. But they decided, hey, we're going to give some red meat to the base here and bomb some shit in Pakistan. They're going to love it. And they do, because it's like they're Hindu nationalists.
That's right.
And so the Pakistanis have been very moderate. This is kind of a role reversal here from what we saw in 2002, where the Pakistanis were the hotheads. Now the Pakistanis are like, okay, well, we'll respond, but we're not going to escalate, but we'll respond. And that's been the pattern so far. Pakistan even went so far as to say, we will not use nuclear weapons. They've forsworn them in this exchange. So, Modi is the wild card here. And I think he's been in power for so long that we kind of didn't really, we got used to him not pulling this kind of shit. Right. And then suddenly here he goes. That's what's weird.
Just like that. We should add, too, that, Kashmir has a long and well-documented political history. When Pakistan and India were divided, when the British pulled out in 1947 and the two countries split from one another and became independent, Bangladesh also split off a little bit later, but they both claimed Kashmir. And so they were able to negotiate a deal that Kashmir would become an independent country, right? So they would mutually agree to withdraw from Kashmir and allow elections, and Kashmir would be an independent country recognized by the United Nations. The Pakistanis withdrew, and the Indians refused to withdraw. And so in what became known as the First Kashmir War, the Pakistanis moved back in, but the Indians largely beat them back to what is now called the line of control. The line of control now gives 1/3 of Kashmir to Pakistan, so the Pakistanis administer it, and 2/3 of Kashmir to India. And India doesn't just administer it, it claims it as a part of India. This is one of those land disputes that is not going away. It's been around for almost 80 years, 78 years. and it's going nowhere.
No, I mean it actually makes you question the whole partition idea in general, right? Because I mean, the whole theory of partition, which Gandhi was all in favor of, was, that Hindus and Muslims wouldn't be able to live side by side in a post-independent, post-British Raj India. And that plainly hasn't been true. I mean, there's certainly been ethnic conflict, but India is the largest Muslim country in the world.
Yeah,
right?
there are more Muslims. Yeah, there are more Muslims in India than there are in Pakistan now.
Right. Or in the second biggest, which is Indonesia, right?
Right.
So it's very strange. It's kind of like, well, so it's incredibly frustrating because we know this just shouldn't have gone this way. This population, in the Muslims who are in Indian Kashmir, they're Muslims. And the thing is, they could have lived there if they weren't being viewed with suspicion and harsh military rule by the Indians. And if there hadn't been this partition idea in the first place, it's frustrating. Then for the Pakistanis, this is a classic case of might makes right. The Indians are just bigger, and they beat the 3 times, right? And the Indians will beat the Pakistanis again. The Pakistanis just don't have the military power to beat India. So it's a much smaller country, even though Pakistan's not a small country.
Yeah, that's
at
right.
all.
That's exactly it. It's not. It's not. Well, I think this is going to get worse. I'll tell a quick little anecdote. I happened to be living in Pakistan in 2002 when they were literally on the precipice, and everybody was afraid it was going to turn nuclear. So I was mentoring a junior CIA officer at the time. She had yet to go overseas on an official operational tour. She was assigned to my branch so that I could sort of teach her in the world of counterterrorism operations. And the American Embassy in Islamabad had a cafeteria that was so enormous it could seat hundreds of people, and on the weekends it doubled as a nightclub. There was a Pakistani cover band that would come in, and with the flashing disco lights and the strobe lights and the disco ball. So it's gigantic. So we go down there one day to have lunch, and it's right at noon. And she looks around and she says, "Where is everybody?" And I said, "Are you kidding me?" And she said, "No, where is everybody?" I said, "They've been evacuated." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Because Pakistan and India are on the brink of nuclear war." And she says, "Are you serious?" I said, "Oh my God. Did you not see the giant helicopter in the parking lot?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you know why it's here?" She said, "No." I said, "It's here to rescue us. We're the only ones here, the CIA people." Mm-hmm. And she said, "My God, I really need to find the time to read the papers." She said, "I've been so busy on this Abu Zubaydah thing. I haven't had any chance to read the papers." I said, "Yeah, it's bad right now." That was 23 years ago, Ted. And here we are, and the whole thing is happening again.
I have a funny story, although mine is in New York. So I went on a trip to India and Pakistan on the same trip. And so I needed visas for both. So I looked up online to where the consulates were, and I noticed that they were a block apart. So I said, okay, so when I'll go, so you drop off your passport at with the Pakistanis, then you pick it up, and I was like, I'll just walk it around the block to the Indians and drop it off with them and then get it later, right? So I go to the Pakistani one, and it's a very old building, and it hasn't been renovated forever, and it's like dusty bookcases with the old fashioned, the ones that with the glass that opens up and pulls, and you push in the beautiful old wood cases with ancient like travel logs from the 19th century, like a journey to Tartary with a side trip to visit the whatever, it's like long Victorian titles, right? And then so I go in there, I get my, the day the Pakistani visa is ready, I check out where's the Indian one. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. The address is almost the same, but on the next street. I go to the Indian consulate. It turns out the building goes through the block. They share the same building.
Oh my
And
God.
the building was partitioned. Back in 1947, it was the Indian consulate for New York City. So they partitioned it. And so I go to the Indian side. The Indian side is, of course, very different, right? It's like ladies in saris and like and all sorts of like disco lighting, like an Indian restaurant. And like when they call you up, it's like ding, ding, ding. And you come over, it's very loud. There's like Indian music and it's very bright. And they're very friendly as opposed to the sort of dour, big bearded Pakistani guys. And so I'm like, so this building, and she's like, oh yes, this building was partitioned, and I'm like, so is there any connection between the two buildings? And she said, yes, there is. In the basement, she's like, there is a bathroom that is stuck between them that's been boarded off since 1947. And she said, we call it Kashmir.
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
So there's a bathroom, and sometimes if they're desperate, they open up that door, they race in to use that bathroom, and the Pakistanis presumably do the same thing sometimes.
Oh my God, I've got to repeat that story.
It's still true. It's still there. It's still like that.
Oh my God.
So if you look at the address, I don't remember what the address is, but it's like the equivalent of like 152, East 52nd Street as opposed to 151 East 53rd Street. It's like that,
Right. Absolutely incredible.
It's
wow.
So bizarre.
See,
and the difference between the two offices, the two countries, is kind of emblematic. Like Pakistan has like these old Raj rail cars, right? Like it's like you feel like it's really romantic.
Yeah.
India is a much more, wild and crazy, rock and roll, funky, modern country, but also weird.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. I remember going to Lahore for the first time and thinking, wow, this is a British city right out of the 18th century.
Yeah.
And I never got that feeling in India. Never.
No. With the soldiers, with the plumes.
Right.
On their helmets.
Right. With the plumes. Yes, I saw them. I went to that spot on the border that you talked about where it's divided, and they have this very, very intricate kind of changing of the guard where they point their rifles at each other and then they salute each other and then they point the rifles again. And I went with a group from ISI, the Pakistani Intelligence Service, and one of the colonels said to me so proudly, he said, we are so proud of the depth of our hatred of the Indians that we've actually made it theatrical. And I said to him, I have never in my life seen anything like this.
It's so bizarre.
It really is.
It's so mannered, and yet it's also one of those things where it's kind of like in California. Everyone in San Francisco hates everyone in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
Los Angeles is the big dog, and they don't pay attention to San Francisco. They don't care. India's like that. India's like, oh yeah, that's right. You guys are over there. It's like a Great Dane compared to a teacup poodle.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Ted, before we go, we've got to talk about Yemen. There were some developments in Yemen over the weekend that would have been more appropriate in an episode of The Twilight Zone than on the front page of the New York Times and the Washington Post. The Yemenis launched a rocket that somehow made it through the vaunted Israeli Iron Dome. The Israelis knew the rocket was coming. They saw it coming. They fired 3 rockets at it and missed all 3 times. And it ended up landing about a quarter of a mile from Ben Gurion Airport outside of Tel Aviv. The airport was shut down for 30 minutes, and then it reopened, and they all went on their merry ways. Well, of course, the Israelis had to respond. So the next day, and by now this is like day before yesterday, the Israelis launched a bombing raid on Sana'a International Airport and said yesterday that they have destroyed it, that it is no longer capable of either incoming or outgoing flights. So the Houthis jumped up and down that this was imperialism and Zionism and blah, 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 blah. And then Donald Trump jumped into it. And he said that if the Houthis continue to attack shipping, he didn't say continue to attack Israel. He said if the Houthis continue to attack shipping, that we're going to flatten that whole country and turn it into glass. And then the Houthis said, we've won our war against shipping, and so we are not going to attack ships anymore. And Trump says, okay, then we're not going to attack the Houthis anymore. So Trump declared victory.
But Sana'a is minus an airport.
But Sana'a is minus an airport. Trump declared victory. The Houthis declared victory. And the Israelis are apoplectic, saying yesterday and today, wait a minute, what about us? You Americans are supposed to be helping us and supporting us. But this is another one of those instances where Donald Trump has come to the conclusion that this is not our fight to fight.
And he's right.
He's right. He's right. It's as simple as that.
He is right. I applaud him for that. He's just pretending not to understand. But also, if I had to tell the Israelis, if there's any watching, it's like, you guys got your pound of flesh. Go home.
Yes. Yes. I think that's it. The Israelis also said over the last couple of days that they intend to occupy all of Gaza permanently. So what it really comes down to, in my view, is they said the quiet part out loud, finally.
Yes.
Everybody has always assumed that was the policy. They came right out and said it. And it was a little blip in the news, and then it went away.
And meanwhile, it's their Israelis, as part of this, are quietly, not so quietly, turning to the West Bank. And they've started flattening entire neighborhoods, something that the New York Times is just starting to notice. It's been obviously going on for a long time, but it's getting more systematic. And they're, they were trying to govern the West Bank by separating everything into cantonments and Bantustans, and now they're just eliminating some of those areas completely. And that's obviously the view here. They don't even, I guess they're not even interested in taking over and stealing the old real estate and the old buildings. They have their own architectural style that they're planning to put in there, clearly. And so but it's very clear what's going on here. I still don't think it's going to fly. I think we've talked about this, you and I, here on the show and with Michelle. This will go. The world will not tolerate the expulsion of the Palestinians and the annexation of Gaza. If it does, there's no semblance of an international order anymore.
Agreed. Lots of stories that bear continued watching.
One thing before we go, I've got to ask you about this because it is kind of terrifying. Back to migrants. The Trump administration has asked Ukraine, demanded that Ukraine accept migrants who are not from Ukraine, basically to have them serve as another El Salvador type gulag for outsourcing detention of migrants who the Trump administration doesn't want around, and presumably their home countries won't accept them. But Trump doesn't seem to care about sending them back to their home countries. And also the Ukrainians, to their credit, have been dragging their feet. They're not interested. They don't want to do it. I guess they're probably like, we have our hands full. And then Libya now. I mean, Libya is a failed state. It's a failed
state. It's like Somalia. Yeah.
It makes me laugh where there's at least 2, 3, maybe 4 by some counts governments there. And it's hilarious where they're like, well, the Trump administration has relations with the government that's in Tripoli. Oh, good for you. And it's like, there's been reports that there are active slave markets in Libya.
There's video and there are photos of these slave markets.
So, I mean, sometimes you're just speechless. Again, Slava Ukraini, good job to you guys. But I mean, again, where's a judge who's to say no to all this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I happen to be in the UK right now. I've been doing a speaking tour, and I started in Edinburgh, then I went to Glasgow, then Newcastle upon Tyne, then Nottingham, and now I'm in London. And 2 nights ago, I debated a retired MI6 officer. And I was surprised at what he called the depth of the British intelligence community's hatred. He didn't say distrust or dislike. He said hatred of Donald Trump, to the point where they hate even cooperating with the United States on things that we've cooperated on for years, just because they hate Donald Trump and the fact that they just can't anticipate anything that he's planning to do. He even brought up this idea to send refugees to Ukraine and Libya. And he said, it makes them wonder if he's just trying to pull a fast one on everybody, if he's just throwing it out there to have a little bit of fun, or if he's a madman. And he actually believes in the things that he says. He said, we're confused and we're tired of guessing. We just want him to go away. And I think that there are a lot of Americans that sort of find themselves coming to the same conclusions.
Yeah, well, no, I think that's kind of where I am too. I mean, I don't know if he's trolling us. I mean, I used to think I always was able to figure this out. Like when he said, Russia, if you have Hillary's emails, please, we'd all like to see them. That's a joke. I know he was joking.
Hey, Ted, your audio has gotten so bad that we can't understand you, I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
So I am going to sign us off, but I'm going to ask first for our viewers, please do us a favor. Consider it a personal favor to Ted and to me, and of course to Michelle. Please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. It really means a lot. So thanks very much. I'm deprogrammed. I think Ted is too. We appreciate you joining us, and we will see you next time with a lot more news. You take it easy.